Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our biggest race of the year, the Bathurst 1000. We've been waiting so long for this day and it's finally arrived for us. We do appreciate all of you being patient with us as we did have to postpone it. But here we are today, this is the day and we're ready to get going. The boys have qualified, we'll go through the results in a second. But I just want to introduce my co-commentator in the commentary box. A man that needs no introduction. He's been busy with representing Ned. If you've been watching the V8s, you'll probably seen his face come up a couple of times. Simmons Plains was the last time I saw him there. But he's been a busy boy, and we're glad that he's taken the time out to join us here in the commentary box. Scott Fitzsimons, how you going, buddy?
Very well, Shay. How are you, mate? It's a pleasure to be back here. It feels like a long time since we've done this, so I'm gnawing at the bit to get into this race. The qualifying was exceptional to watch, really tight qualifying, and as you see the remnants of warm-up at the moment, but yeah, ready to go.
Yeah, I was just see Baker in the Racecentre car going on two wheels there. It's just distracted me. Yeah, look, it's 161 laps. I can't stress that enough, how much that's going to mean to these boys. It's going to be about a 6-hour race today. Each lap consists of 6.213 kilometres, and the lap record in real life was Chaz Mostert in qualifying in 21 with a 2:03.337. The temperature today is quite hot. The sun is out, as you can see, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So a couple of things I just wanted to talk to you guys about and explain a few things. Pretty much for today's tyre selection, the boys have got 3 sets of tyres to choose from. So look for the band on the side of the car. The white represents the soft tyre. The wet tyre is the green compound, which I'm not too sure if we're going to see that today. The bomb's not showing any chance of rain. So the only other one would be the yellow band tyre, which would be the hard compound. So they're the 3 compounds today. And so look out for those with the pit strategy. So we've got a few guys out on track at the moment. I'm just trying to see where we're at.
While Shane, you're playing with that, I'll run through some of the names that have popped up in practice and particularly qualifying. And funnily enough, the top 3 and the early pace setters, we've got 1 representative from Racecentre in Sydney, 1 representative from Racecraft in Perth, and then 1 privateer, if you will, representative driving from home. And we'll start with them, Chris McLennan and Mark Young. Both put in 158s individually in the qualifying session, but it was Chris McLennan from the Down Under series that topped the qualifying session with a 158.001, so 158 near flat. The things you can do on virtual racing, that's a pretty rapid speed, and that's a team that is very, very experienced in all forms of sim racing, and I think you're going to be very, very consistent today, and there's one to look out for. And second was the Racecentre car, the Collins and Pritchard, Matt Collins and Braden Pritchard. I've got to call these guys the go-karting entry today. They dabble or in go-karts or have in the past. Experienced in the sim racing world as well in the fantastic-looking MJ building car. And in third was a team that won't be any surprise to those who've watched this race before. This actually is made up of Anthony Jewell as well as Alex Zani and John Lee. Now, if we cast our eyes back to the 2019 race, it was Anthony Jewell that won this race with Liam Fisher. On that occasion, Alex Zani and John Lee came second in a pairing, so they've teamed up for a trio, the only trio today. It's going to be interesting to see whether the 3-driver strategy pays off against the 2, but they were the 3 quick pace setters, and as I said, 1 from each field today, 1 from Sydney, Perth and Privateers at home.
Yeah, so after him it was Matthews and Buxton from Racecraft up at in Perth, and they've done a stellar job to put that in P4. Some of these other guys from the Racecentre, we've been racing with these cars all year long, so for these guys to be putting it up towards the pointy end of the grids. A huge effort. P5 is Dine and Herbert combo, and they're in the Ned Whiskey car. Something close to home for you, Scott?
Yeah, buddy. As someone who might have something to say about the livery of the real life cars, I think we can almost call this livery a retro Ned livery. But it's excellent, and it's actually just on that team as well. I've been watching a few of these guys that may not be week in, week out sim racers who've just been building through that 50-minute qualifying session. So I expect some of these guys in the 5 to 10 to really, compete for the top 5 positions as the race wears on.
Yeah, so in P6 we've got our second of our privateer teams. So that's Josh Just and Stephen O'Brien. Josh hails from Queensland, 35-year-old who's been in the sim racing for a couple of years, and he's been hooked ever since. So this is one of many Bathurst full-length races that he's done. So he's keen to get the job done today. After 6 hours, we'll find out whether he gets the job. He's sporting a beautiful retro Dick Johnson livery. As you can see there, the old Shell 17, beautiful entry. His co-driver, Stephen O'Brien, 38, also in sim racing for a few years, and enjoys karate and gardening in his spare time. He grows a couple of hundred organic garlic plants a year. So safe to say it'll be good to clear out of that place after a 6-hour run, I'd say. And that's their privateers. So P7's the Breyer Henderson combo from Racecraft, which I'll just briefly explain. If you see the RK, that represents their racing from the Racecraft in WA Sim Centre. If you ever get a chance, check it out if you're in Perth. And RC represents Racecentre here at Entertainment Park in Bankstown. So if you're close to Sydney, come on in and get on board. The PV means a private team. Chris McLennan at the front for Down Under series is another privateer, and they'll be driver swapping at the front with Mark Young. So that's his co-driver. We'll get through the field now. P8 is Harrison Tebb and Jake Elder. Elder hasn't been here for about a year, so he's dusted off the cobwebs and teamed up with Harrison Tebb, who's actually leading our V8 league for 2022. So there'll be a strong contingent. So too will Baker and Royal in P9 at the moment. Newcomers Grushin and Judd, they round out the top 10 for today in the Boost Mobile from Racecraft. So the P11 will be the Capone Marabito couple in the Irwin race car. They're also from Racecraft, relatively new to sim racing, so hopefully they get used to all the intricacies of R Factor 2, and we'll get a result. So stay tuned for that. Harding and Roma, also here at Racecentre on screen in the background there, will be driving in the monster car. They've done a good job to be in the low twos. I'm actually impressed with all of these lap times, to be honest. Getting in the low twos on full tanks is a stellar effort, so we're looking forward to see how they go.
Yeah, and one thing that is going to be a little bit of a curveball potentially is Lachlan Roma. I note is not a fan of the round ball or egg-shaped ball spot. So those of us sporting a bit of fatigue from staying up to 3:30 watching a certain World Cup at the moment, he won't be suffering from any of that, I don't believe.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a good idea to be staying up wide-eyed, coffee-induced comas. So will be an endurance race, just like the real drivers. So these sims are simulating the real feedback and motion of the real guys. So they will be enduring the 6 hours as to would a real-life race driver. They won't get the heat because the aircon is on, but and in Perth, they got the beers and the barbie going. So we'll hope to see a bit of footage from them later on. But we've got to get on with the race now. It's going to be a long one. So closing out the 15 is Nunez Chialeglio from Racecentre and Hanbury Roberts, P14, and Kazizis and Grant in the Red Bull for Racecraft in Perth. All right, guys, stay tuned. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be back after these messages.
There is nothing like the mountain, the speed, the history, and most importantly, the sound. It's part of the Bathurst 1000, and now it's part of your whiskey too. Aged to perfection with the sweet sounds of a roaring V8 pumping through each oak barrel. Like a perfect lap of the mountain, each sip will leave you wanting more. For the second year, Ned Australian Whiskey brings you the 2022 limited edition Sounds of Bathurst Whiskey. And this year, Ned have taken it up a gear. The boldest drink for the greatest race in Australia.
Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to get ready for this 161 lap super hot race around Bathurst Mount Panorama. 6.2 kilometres each lap and 161, meaning we're looking, I think, just over the 5 hour mark, between 5.5 and 6 max. So make sure you stay tuned for the whole race as we're about to get underway. The boys are getting ready now and gridding up. They have 1 minute to set their tyre strategy, their fuel strategy, and get themselves on the grid. Okay, so before we get going, we are going to do a formation lap. Some of the boys are on the grid. Look at the grid. That's a healthy looking grid, Scott. They're all gridded up. We will be rolling off in a formation lap. So Chris McClellan just leading him out there in the number 1 car for Down Under Series in the Holden ZB. His second picture there on the overlay down the bottom right hand corner. So the guys are just going to warm up their tyres, give us a lap, and as they do that, we're going to go to show you the starting grid. We've got a couple of minutes to go through the grid. As you saw before, Chris McLennan and Mark Young will be starting on P1. Right behind them, Matthew Collins and Braden Pritchard. They'll be strong in the first turn. Zani and Buxton, P4. P5 will be the Don and Herbert, Justin O'Brien and the Shell livery, Brazier Henderson and Elder and Teb rounding on your top 8. P9 will be Baker Royal, Grushin and Judd next to them. We've got Capone, Marabiato for Cap 1 Racing in the Irwin car. P13, Nunez and Chirleglio. Gabriel Nunez will be starting in that car. Hanbury Roberts, P14, and Kazizis Grant will be starting in P15. So it's a healthy looking grid, Scott. Let's see how they get through turn 1.
Yeah, I think it is a healthy looking grid, and I think the key to today's race is going to be consistency. It's going to be finding a rhythm. We've got 161 laps, 110 litres of fuel tank in each car. That we judging by some of the race simulations in warm-up and qualifying, we're looking at about 5.4 litres per lap, which is going to give you a stint of about 20 laps. Now, a lot of that's going to come down to consistency in the driving, because you're just going to scrape into an 8 pit stop race if you can get it down to 20 laps. You don't want to be stopping more than you need to. no damage. We're here to have a little bit of fun, but it's all about rhythm, and the rest of the simulation is as is. So, making sure that your tyres last. It's going to be interesting to see if anyone gambles with a bit of soft tyres. We do have Chris McClellan on soft tyres to start off. Pretty much everyone else on the hards, apart from the Baker Royal car and Harding Roma. So I think you might get a double stint out of a hard tyre, but judging again on the qualifying data, looks like you're going to be changing your softs, potentially losing about 4% of the tyre life each lap. So that's going to be a fascinating one to watch as well. But yeah, I think getting through turn one, getting a little bit of airspace, particularly if you're in the top 3 or 4, is going to be vital. It's so easy to get stuck in a mid-pack squabble in this first stint and be turned around, lose your rhythm, and you're fighting back for the next 5 hours.
Yeah, the boys should be getting nervous right about now. Just moving into Murray's corner, we can see the weaving going on as we get through the grid. We've got Chris McLennan come around Murray's corner, slowing the grid down. They've just got to find their grid spot, slot in, and we're looking at 161 laps. Beautiful livery with Elder Teb entry. Got the Save Wakefield hashtag on there. So if you're watching and you want to save the Wakefield track in Goulburn, New South Wales, please get on board, sign the petition, and save that very useful racetrack and beautiful racetrack for us. All right, the final boys are gridding up now. Nervous wait for the green light, Scott.
It always is. Doesn't matter what the race is here at Bathurst.
Okay, so it looks like they've all slowed in. We can hear the lights going. There it is. That's a green. McLennan getting off very cleanly. Pritchard getting in tight behind. I think that's Collins at the wheel now. And they get through turn one relatively easily. I don't see any numbers drop. Oh, there's a couple that's clipped each other in the background. But the rest of the boys have got through.
Matthews Buxton car just got a little bit wide on the entry to Hell Corner there, and they've had a little bit of tangle there with the Hanbury Roberts. Also, not the greatest start from the Ned Livery entry car. Got a little bit sluggish off the start line, and a little bit of a tangle there with with David Baker in that car. But they managed to get through, and they're pushing up the field as they went up Mountain Straight side by side.
I can see a few nervous guys in here at Racecentre, but it's still McLennan and Collins, which is just come in the clutches of, looks like Alexani. No, I think actually Anthony Jules at the wheel of the Monster car. I do know because he's got some real life racing duties this afternoon, so he's keen to get some K's in and then hand it over to Zani, who'll be another strong contender later on. So looking down the field as McClellan, Collins, Jewell, Guinan in the Ned Whiskey entry, doing well. P4 already moving up the field. The other Kelly brothers racing. Or we can see Baker trying to get up the inside. Oh, we're going to see an accident here right across, and that's a position. He's just outbroke himself. That was the Castrol entry there, and he's lost a few positions.
So the young guns of this race, 16 and 17 years old. They've dropped down to 12th with that spin as he just tries to extricate himself from the chase at the moment.
Very unfortunate. They were doing well in P4, and they've just come out in front of another driver, but McLennan leads him up lap 2 up Mountain Straight with already a 1.3 second gap back to Collins, who's actually just creeping up a little bit there now.
As expected, the Chris McClellan car has taken an early lead, and it's just going to be the pace setter, I think. If you're sitting in the top 5 at the moment, it's get in the wheel tracks of the car in front of you and just get into a rhythm for this race because you don't want to be too scrappy. We also had a bit of an issue for Gabriel Nunez, who's running down in 15th at the moment. I didn't see exactly what happened there. I think they had a moment up the top of the mountain.
We've got a replay feature that we'll try and bring to you throughout the day as we're watching Jewel and Collins battle it out across Skyline. So stay tuned for that feature.
Chris McLuhan in the lead coming into the chase, followed by Colin, Zani, Dynan and Baker, who has the fantastically liveried retro shell car just behind him.
Yeah, that's a Justin O'Brien entry from Queensland there.
Yeah, now we saw a lot of speed from David Baker in warm-up, dipped into the 159s, couldn't quite replicate it in qualifying. But that's a car to watch out for as the race progresses. We're already starting to dip into some quick times. The Ned livery, I think we're going to mention it a few times, has the quickest lap of the race so far. Dynan sitting at 2:200.9 on lap 2, so very, very quick already. The quickest man out there at the moment, 3 seconds off the overall lead. As there's a bit of a gap between 4th and 5th, as David Baker getting a little bit squiggly coming out of Griffin's Bend.
Looks like McLennan's stretching away there, that lead bouncing out to a 1.4 second lead now. I'm sure he's got some clear space and just trying to settle in, look after those tyres. As we said, actually we can go to the tyre indicator to see who's on what compound. We've got a couple of guys on softs there. Chris McLennan is on the softs, and further down the Baker Royal decided to start on soft as well. So they should be pitting early. We'll see what pit window. My guess is around the 12-14 lap mark, so keep an eye out on that. They're going to be punished with a full load of fuel, so hopefully they learn to manage it. We know Chris McLennan's a seasoned campaigner, so he should be able to get the job done, and he's on a flow at the moment, as you can see from the track map on the top right hand corner. If you see a flame behind the car, it means they're on one of their faster times. So look out for that throughout the race there.
It's going to be interesting. I think there's a definite speed advantage with the soft tyres, particularly early in the stints. The value's going to be with the hards if you can double stint them, and whether there's going to make up the difference that the soft tyre in pure lap speed advantage is going to give you. So it's something that's going to play. We probably honestly won't know that until the second and third stints to see how that's playing out. But it may be something in changing tyres every pit stop if you can get the softs to last there. But we'll keep an eye on the tyre deck as this stint goes in. As we said, expecting about 20 laps in between stints.
Yeah, the hard tyre with a full load of fuel. I think they're gonna be matching fuel load to tyre wear, so there shouldn't be too much of a mismatch there. And yeah, about the 2022 mark will be the tyre, the pit window for the round one of pit stops, and we'll see who actually gets in and out of the cars. At the moment in Racecentre, we've got David Baker running in the Baker Royal car in P5. Gabriel Nunez is in the seat in P15, and we've got Jake Elder doing the opening stint, which is a bit of a surprise, but he's absolutely nailing his opening stint for someone who hasn't driven for a year. And we've got the Roma Roberts entry as well. So, sorry, Harding Roma. So we've got Roma in the seat on the number 6 entry, and that's the other soft tyre compound car running today.
We'll see what time Chris McClellan in the lead puts in this time around. The last time around, get a 2:00.4, which is the quickest of the race so far. So it'd be a good indicator of speed to see now that he's doesn't have to worry too much about the car behind. He's got a 2.1 second gap at the moment. He crosses the line. We will just see what that last lap was. 2:01 flat. Ahead of 2:01.3 for Collins, so just settling in there as the race progresses.
Yeah, on screen we've got Stephen O'Brien on the driver cam, so we can see Stephen's in the seat at the moment in the Dick Johnson tribute livery, currently circulating P6 now. There are a couple of guys with driver cams as well, and we'll go through and introduce those as they're in. We've got on screen now is the Chris McClellan entry. That is Chris McClellan driving in VR, so he's nailing the laps at the moment. His last lap was a 2:01, and now he's just taken the best lap of the race with a 2-minute flat, 0.449, and that's with about 80 litres of fuel already. And it looks like
quick battle developing just for fourth position. The Diamond car in the Ned livery had a bit of a moment coming out of the cutting across the top of the mountain, sort of caught by David Baker, who's sort of been bottled up the cars behind him as well. So just a little mistake, but cost him a second and a half or so. And David Baker takes a quick look down the inside of Forest Elbow. Probably is going to be better looking for the slipstream if he wants to make this pass work. About a 6-second gap to Anthony Jewell in third place, the field there. Stephen O'Brien taking a look there as well as we enter into the chase. Another little wiggle, maybe just struggling with a little bit of balance on that car at the moment. It's all good working out your brake bias in qualifying, but sometimes it's a different matter when it comes to the race. The intensity of the race, the concentration levels required can affect the way that you brake, particularly with trail braking into the chase and out. That was a 2:05 there for, I believe it's Dynan in that car. So a little bit slower than what they've put up so far. But important now just to jump back into a rhythm. A little bit defensive heading up Mountain Straight. Probably wouldn't be worrying too much about defending this early in the race, but we know that David Baker, who slaps the wall on the outside of Griffin's Bend, be pretty eager to move things along here.
Got the Hanbury and Roberts combo under pressure from Breyer and Henderson. You can see on screen now. Will he dive up the inside? Oh, he locks up a bit, tries to get it under control. Great job to keep the car under control there, avoiding any incidences. But great job from those two further back in P13 and 12.
And we've just had a change position for second, with Anthony Jewell going through Collins up the top of the mountain, heading across Skyline into the Dipper. There's a gap that's now a 4.6 second gap, and Anthony Jewell, who we know has won this race before in 2019, has, I think, made the decision you can't let Chris McClellan get too far away up the track, 5 seconds almost now. And if you let him get away, it's going to be a tough call to try and drag him in as this race goes on. So now's the time to have a pounce and try and put down some quick laps.
We can just see on screen now how that position changed. Collins just clipped the wall there coming up the mountain, and he got it all crossed up over the grate, and Sonny just took the position there. Almost lost it himself coming across Skyline. So looks like as we're going to the replay, Collins has just taken the position back from Anthony Jewell, and so those positions have resumed. McLennan still out in front with Collins P2, Jewell P3, and Herbert P4. Just looking.
It's playing into McClellan's hands if these two keep squabbling, putting in 203s while he's backing out 201s and 20s flat.
see Dynan and Herbert just stretching away from Royal now in P5. Grushin Judd, I've been told they're relatively new to sim racing and they're doing a fantastic job holding out P6 at the moment, ahead of Josh Justin, Stephen O'Brien there in P7.
Yeah, just doing the right thing, keeping it nice and smooth, Grushin and Judd, staying out of trouble, putting out a good race pace. Bet the 201s, 202s, they seem to be consistently banging in.
Just going to see if anyone's suffered from in the race thus far. Looks like the Harding Roma entry is being given a 10-second penalty.
I think that might have come from warm-up.
Yeah, okay, so please ignore those comments as we can see them on screen. Looks like the Harding Roma up into P9 in the Monster Energy entry. Fantastic effort, guys. Keep it going. This is excellent work. The Elder Teb as well. Beautiful orange striking livery on screen now. That is Jake Elder at the wheel. The first picture on the overlay, bottom right-hand corner. Harrison Tebb giving him tips as well. Harrison's got real-life experience working with the TA class. Recently come away with a win at Bathurst himself.
The Ben Brayer Macca Henderson car's taken another look down the inside at Forest Elbow and now into the chase as well. The young kids, the combination 16 and 17 years old, have a lot of pace as they dive down the inside out the exit of the chase. If you can hold it there and keep that outside line, you may have this one sorted after a lap of squabbling.
There's a lock up. Oh, and they've taken each other out at Murray's Corner. I'm sure they'll give the position back. That was a lock up and an accident. But they take the position back, and rightly so. That's gentleman's sport, that is. So they've got a lot of racecraft and understanding of real-life racing, what to do in those situations. As we go back up the front, Chris McClellan starting the lap now. We see Gabriel Nunez coming under fire in P15 with Chris McClellan coming up behind. Beautiful shot coming down Conrod. See Chris McClellan closing in. Gabriel's just got to keep his cool there, let the driver through as he does. And that's Chris McClellan starting to lap the field after 8 laps of 161. Okay, looks like Chris next victim is Kazizis and the Grant entry in the Red Bull. These guys are lapping in the 213s now, starting to make little mistakes, but managing to stay on track and keep it on the black stuff, which is great to see. So Collins coming back under fire from Anthony Jewell. We know from a couple of years ago, Scott, Anthony Jewell was in the Penrite car and lost 161 laps by 0.3 of a second. 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable race to come down that close after so long of a racing, and they had magnets in the cars, I think, for the 6 hours that race went. Barely did you need to switch cameras to see both of them.
Yeah, it was very nervous here watching it. You know, like it was quite intense because the gap was closing over the last 3 laps, and if you ever get to see it, look for it on YouTube. It's a beautiful ending to a massive race. So
quick change for position in 10th. The Josh Matthews Jordan Buxton car going up the inside. That's the Racecentre car of the John Harding Lachlan Roma racing out of Racecentre, just into Griffiths there. And the Capone Morabito, car is just in front. I think a little bit of a a moment for them has put them into the crosshairs of the Milwaukee Tools entry, who might be able to pull up 2 positions in the one lap.
Yeah, the Matthews Buxton's chasing Capone entry, Morabito, the Irwin race car, quite hard now.
Change of position further down the track as well. Gabriel Nunes has managed to drag that car up to 14th as the Kazaz's Grant car slips down to 15th after a little bit of moment somewhere on the track. Both those cars now are a lap down. Nunes just has to be a little bit careful there getting onto the grass as the 2nd and 3rd place cars come around with their own battle. 7.5 seconds between the 1st and 2nd positions at the moment. Just going into the cutting around the outside goes Anthony Jewell, nice and clean.
In the driver's briefing before the race, they were instructed to just be mindful of the slower drivers, and it is the faster car's responsibility to overtake safely. We don't want to see the slower guys getting pushed off the track just to get past in poor position. Again, it is a long race, 161 laps, and we're only in lap 10. The guys are starting to spread out a fair bit now. Collins, Pritchard dropping off McLennan by 7.5 seconds. So I'd say we'd be close to a pit stop from McLennan entry as we're watching the Matthews Buxton entry just stretch away from Capone Morabito.
Yeah, that car's got up into 9th now. A bit of a recovery mission from them after being buried a little bit further down in the field. But consistent laps has managed to drag them into contention there. Lapping around the 2:04, 2:03 mark. A 2:01.9, their quickest of the race so far.
As we said before, a couple of guys that are running on softs could be looking at coming into pit pretty soon. I know I heard the pit crew getting ready for the monster car, so keep a lookout for Matthews Buxton. Sorry, the Harding Roma entry. We'll keep an eye on these guys, see if they do pull into the lane. This will be our first pit stop of the day. They've gone out for another lap, so false alarm. They're probably foxing the team behind. We've got Dyson Herbert just taking Nunes there as they come up the cutting.
So just on tyres, the key here is going to be the front right. So those who are sitting on the soft tyres, depending on how they're able to manage that tyre, I think are going to be hurting a little bit by the time they get the 15 lap onwards mark. You're expecting, if we're talking about fuel loads, 20 laps between stints. The guys on the hards still look like they've got a fair bit of tyre life in them as we've sort of gone through 10 laps. So they're going to have no issue there, but it's going to be very interesting to watch the soft guys. Again, Chris McCullen, very, very experienced sim racing driver, big part of the Down Under series. So I imagine very, very mindful of the tyre wear on the car, being able to manage that. The other one to keep an eye on is in 5th, David Baker behind the wheel there. We know how aggressive David is, so is he going to be able to manage the tyre life on that front right?
We can see from his telemetry he's well under 50% tyres. I can see his pit window button is open, so I would be very surprised if he comes in now for a set of tyres. He's still got plenty of tread left on there, as I can see here from the commentary box. As we see Nunes going in the grass, getting out of the way of the drivers behind.
Yeah, I think anything under about 18 laps between stints is just going to be way too short for a race of this distance. So they're really going to need to push that out somehow. We are seeing, though, as we discuss this, the cars in second and third, Collins and Jewel, closing in on Chris McClellan. Gaps down to about 6.1 seconds. It had ballooned up to about 8. You've got to take into account the traffic. There's a bit of an elastic effect as cars go through traffic, but just keeping an eye on that. Maybe there's a bit of degradation happening there as well. David Baker, if we look at the other hard versus soft battle, has fallen about 4 seconds behind Travis Dynan, I believe is in the car sitting in fourth.
Yeah, so we know they're hard, as you said. For the newer guys, it's a bit harder to ask them to think about their tyre wear. They just need to drive to stay on the track, basically. That's their number one focus, and if they burn the tyres in the meantime, then so be it. Throughout the race, I think they're going to improve on that and end up with longer stints, longer laps between each stint. So we're watching the battle, Collins and Jewel battling it out, down Conrad coming into the chase. It's an awesome view watching them at 305 kilometres an hour down to about 100 through the fast left-hander up over the curb and getting back on it under the bridge down to Murray's Corner.
Gap between first and second, hovering around the 6 second mark still. The race is starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm. One of the cars to look out for, as you mentioned, Shannon, the Sasha Grun and Sean Judd car in the Boost Mobile livery. Running in seventh, closing in on Stephen Just, we believe. Josh Just, Stephen O'Brien, Josh Just in the Retro Shell car, currently sitting in sixth. But they've been very, very consistent. And quickest laps not far away from the cars up the front. If we look at the best laps of teams so far, we've got almost half the field dipping into the 201s. The Matthews, Buxton and Grushin Judd car in the high 201s. But that's a very, very good pace. Only 3 cars have dipped into the 2-minute flats, that being Chris McClellan, the Collins Pritchard and the Travis Dynan Herbert car in first, second and fourth respectively. Currently sitting on lap 12 as we follow on the rear bumper of the second place car, looking back to Anthony Jewell in the Walkinshaw and Dreaded United livery. Commodore sitting in third. Lap 12, so again, about 8 laps off pit stops, we think. The first stint can be a little bit aggressive. You can get a little bit more wheel spin, which is going to use up a little bit more fuel, so it might be a slightly shorter stint. We've also got the warm-up lap, which, although taken at crawling pace, does still have an impact on fuel, so we might dip in a little bit earlier than we will see as the race settles in and the race progression. We might take this opportunity to take a look down the field, see what's going on elsewhere. First, second and third. First, second and third, currently mirroring the positions we saw in qualifying, and quite aptly representing the 3, I guess, broader teams of the race weekend. Racecentre in Western Sydney, at the Entertainment Park Complex, Racecraft out in Perth, and the privateers racing from around Australia. But we might run through the field quite quickly. We've got Chris McClellan leading the charge in that fantastically Gary Rogers Motorsport livery, number 33, as he dives into into the Forest Elba onto Conrod Straight, following this ongoing battle, which is starting to simmer down a little bit. The Matt Collins, Braden Pritchard, I guess, were both drivers with a bit of go-karting experience, either past or present, sitting in second currently. Never far away is the only trio of drivers we have this weekend. Anthony Jewell in the car at the moment, driving out of Perth in Racecraft, currently sitting in third. If we dive a little bit further down, Travis Diamond and Jensen Herbert in the Ned liveried car. Involved in a little bit of argy-bargy early in the race, particularly off the start line. Now just in a little bit of open air space. No one really in front of them and no one really behind. About a 10-second gap either way, give or take. Sitting in fifth is the David Baker Bryce Royal car, another of the Racecentre entries, sitting in fifth. Again, involved in a little bit of elbows out racing at the start of the race, now settling into a bit of a rhythm. And not far behind them as we jump on board out of the rear bumper of the Just O'Brien car, sitting in sixth at the Retro Shell livery. Happy just to follow in the wheel tracks of the Racecentre livery car in front of it. Further down, one of the biggest improvers of the race so far, Grushin and Judd, fairly new to STEM racing. Been very, very consistent, sitting down in seventh. Started a little way back in 10th on the grid, so good effort from them to climb up first. It's got a little bit of a yellow someone's off sector one, as we sort of see there, as we just jump onto the Elder and Ted mobile, which had a bit of a moment at the exit of the cutting and has just lost that position now. Currently sitting in ninth position, Matthews Buxton, jumping up into the might just jump. There's the young guns, 16 and 17 years old at the back there. But yeah, Matthews and Buxton having taken that position, sitting up in 8th currently. And rounding out the top 10, the Team 18 liveried Capone Morabito. Just exiting Forest's elbow as we see the Matthews car entering into the chase. Diving into the pits, we see the Elder and Ted car. This is on lap 14, so a bit earlier than we thought. Looks like there might be a bit of a mix of tyres here as well. If I take a look over, hards on the front, softs on the rear. Looks like there's going to be a driver change as well. So Jake Elder getting out, Harrison Ted getting in. And yes, a split tyre strategy. Hards on the front, softs on the back, which is something that we hadn't anticipated, but might be a help to try and alleviate that front right degradation, which is going to be such a big part of this race. So that car is away and out. Ted now behind the wheel. They'll come out in 12th position, still on the lead lap, but just.
As they do that, we can see on screen on the replay how they lost that position. We saw Gabriel Nunes almost cutting in front, and the Teb Elder just getting loose, coming out of the cutting there. You can see it just getting on the gas too early. That's probably why they did come into the pits. They lost too much valuable time. And we're back live now with Elder and Teb.
Just a bit of developing news here. We've just seen the Chris McClellan car pull into the pits. The car that was dominating it led from lap 1 and may be an early retirement, judging by the timing screen I've seen here. It was about 6 seconds to the good at the front of the race when I last checked. We'll check in with the team there, and but that would be very, very dramatic. The car that had set the pace with a storming 158 flat in qualifying to take pole position and had led from the first corner onwards.
Well, that's developing news. I'm not too sure what's happening. We're seeing...
Which means we have a fight for the lead as Anthony Jewell tries to go down the inside heading into Skyline. Decides better if it pulls out later onto the brakes than the Collins car heading in to the Jipper and the S's. But this is now effectively the battle for the lead. Lap 16 as we get towards the latter stages of this first stint.
We'll see if we can get these guys back into the sim and adjust laps to make sure they're back on the lead lap and in position. But at the moment, where we can just see on their driver cam, they're just trying to reload in, which successfully they are allowed to back in as we see Teb now.
Anthony Jewell takes a look up the inside, heading into the chase for the race lead.
It looks like Collins coming into pit
Collins
lane.
Into the pits, lap 16. They're diving into. Quite an early stop, but we'll see how this strategy plays out across the race. Putting Anthony Jewell into the lead for the first time. So far, the only car to dive into the pits on this lap. All things going well, should appear about 7th or 8th position. Obviously not a true representation of the race until everyone pit stops and the race shakes itself out.
This screen definitely shows the deficit that you give away under a full pit stop. Jewell already on top of the mountain while Collins is still in pit lane. As they exiting pit lane now, we're almost coming down Skyline.
A few more teams in. David Baker coming in the Team Racecentre car, handing over to Royal, who will take the second stint here, followed in by the Grushin Judd as well. Just like to get an update from the team communications if there's a driver change there as well. I dare say there will be good to get drivers in and get some laps under the belt as early in the race as possible, so they can settle into a rhythm for the middle part. They'll exit in 5th place, in 6th place, apologies. Collins Pritchard card sitting in 5th. Just keeping an eye on the leaders now entering the chase, whether they decide Anthony Jewell in the Walkinshaw Andretti United liveried appliances only car, lighting up the rears as he exits out of the chase. They're going to do another lap around. They're going to get closer to 18, 19 laps, which is where we thought.
We've got a spinner.
That was the Zissy's Grant sitting down in 15th. 17-point turn to get that one righted, and away they go. The second place car on the track, Dynan Herbert, comes into the pits. The Just O'Brien entry staying out as well. So the on-track standings, which are not perfect representation of where this race will shake out is currently the Zani, Jewel and Lee in the lead, yet to pit, followed by the Just O'Brien, Retro Shell liveried entry, and then the Milwaukee Tools, Matthews and Buxton, Josh Matthews and Jordan Buxton entry, sitting in third. Also yet to pit, the leading car that has taken a pit stop is the Collins Pritchard entry, the MJ Build Constructions car, which, depending on when the lead car pits, and we'll take a look to see whether they come in this lap, it's going to be very, very close on pit exit when they do decide to take that first pit stop. Unfortunately, we were robbed of the first pit stop from Chris McClellan, also on the soft tyres, so we don't have a true guide of how well the soft tyres were holding up towards the end of that stint. Anthony Jules staying out for another lap, so he will get close to that 20-lap limit. But let's just have a look at the respective lap times as they're going around. That last lap was a 2:01.8. As we dip to the Collins and Pritchard card, which is just coming down Conrod Straight at the moment.
Looks like the Kazis Grant entry is struggling on Murray's Corner there. Not too sure if we've seen him come into the pits. We'll just go to the number of stops counter, see who has actually been in there. And you can see the top three have been in there. The first ones that have been up the top there in P4 at the moment, the Collins Pritchard, but the Grant Kazis entry hasn't come in. So I wonder if that's a tyre issue that we've got there with that team. Those hard tyres really starting to go soft now. The track temperature boiling at the moment. I think it's about 30, 35 degrees. I'm not too sure. I'll have to have a look at the on-track temp stats for that one. But Grant Kazis doing well to just get the rhythm going, get back into the stream, although they've just cooked it coming out of there. Maybe their traction control they could do with a bit more. We'll go further up the front. Matthews Buxton P3. Stellar job from these boys. They've just been consistent, just putting their head down and moving up, and their last lap was a 2:03, but their best so far today is a 2:01.9, and that's probably on old tyres because we can see that they're still on the old set of boots. So watch out for them. They're trying to probably stretch out a pit stop and save one in the long run. But we've got the leaders now coming into the pit lane.
I've just been watching the times between this car and the leading car on the track that has opposite a pit stop, the Collins Pritchard car. The undercut might be on here, about 55 seconds the gap when they pulled in, which has been about the length of traversing the pit lane, tyres and fuel. And the Anthony Jewell did catch a little bit of traffic across the top of the mountain on that in lap. So be interesting to see who comes out on top here, because they will get the clean air, so to speak, for the effective lead of the race. We do have the Chris McClellan car back in the race, currently sitting down in 10th position on the lead lap, but about 80 seconds, so about just over half a lap of the lead as we see the second place on the track, Just O'Brien, come in as well. So onto the main straight comes the Collins Pritchard car, and it's going to get out in front. The undercut has worked as I suspected it might have done, and they're going to get a good few, about 5 seconds I reckon, by the time the Zani Jewel Lee car gets out of the pits. Maybe not quite as much, 3.5 seconds or so. So this gives that car a little bit of open space to really stretch its legs. That lap that they got the undercut on, just lost the time in there for a second, but I believe it was about 2:02. So we're 20 laps in. Every car has offered us one pit stop at least, so we've got a pretty true representation of the field at the moment. Out of Racecentre, Collins Pritchard, MJ Building entry, leading the race. followed by, I guess, the talismanic entry from Racecraft out in Perth, Zani, Jewel and Lee in second. About 2.5 seconds off the leaders. Collins just gets caught up at the top of the mountain by Cazares and Grant. This is going to really play into the second place cars fielders. There's very, very hard to get past anyone at the top of the mountain. A little bit of fender rubbing there. That lap is down to under a second now. And that's going to be the story of the rest of the afternoon, I believe. Lap traffic being able to get through them nice and quickly. And that lead, that undercut, has evaporated. As we just watch this into the chase, there's a bit of argy-bargy. The Red Bull car of Kazazis and Grant running down at 15th. Woof, very lucky not to cause something there. They've been struggling with a little bit of handling issues, I think, there, and they're just going to extricate themselves from the kitty leader down at the chase as the Zani Jewel lead car takes a bit of a look up the inside, heading into Hell Corner and up Mount Straight. It's interesting, Chris McClellan exiting the pits from that mechanical issue is now virtually a lap down. This could be lap one, but unfortunately for the McLaren car, it's going to get out of the way, yield those positions.
We can see on screen. Sorry, Scott. We can see on screen here Kazusi just coming straight through. You can see how close that was, almost taking out the leaders of the race, but they managed to get going. Very disappointing look from the guy in the crowd there, but we'll go back live as the battle's still out front with 0.2 of a second. You can see, and is that the McLennan car behind them as well?
It is now officially a lap down, unfortunately, and it must be quite painful to be watching that battle rage on up ahead, knowing that they had this race pretty well playing out in front of them. Everything was going their way, a good 6 seconds gap to the lead until some mechanical issues put them a lap down. Looking very racy. It could potentially be Anthony Jewell still in this car. He's the current second place as they pull out, and it's going to be a drag race down Conroy.
Yeah, it's still Jewell in the car. He'll be doing triple stints at the start of the race.
And so you've got a warm driver against someone doing their first few racing laps. Anthony Jewell into the grass. He's got to look, can he pull it up? He can't, and that's going to be costly. That's going to be costly.
Well, that's going to give Collins definitely some breathing space as McLaren comes up behind Matthew Collins now.
It's a 12 second gap now between first and second. And from being under pressure, the race leading Matt Collins, Braden Pritchard car just can breathe a little bit, get back into a rhythm. And now in third, punching in some very, very quick laps, is Harrison Tebb out of Racecentre.
So race stewards have adjusted the race details and given McLennan that lap back. So now this is for positions 1 and 2. Chris McLennan had an electrical issue, unfortunately, due to the game, but we've adjusted that now, and this is the actual lead of the race with Collins and McLennan up in P2.
So just when Collins and Pritchard thought they could have a break after that issue for Anthony Jewell, they're right back under the pump again as Chris McLennan, the early pace setup, is taking a look down the outside into the S's and the Toyota Gazoo Dipper. I think if he lines this one up well enough, he should be able to get in the wheel tracks down Conrod and execute the pass into the chase. Easier said than done though, as we saw with the Anthony Jewell car. Last lap, couldn't quite pull it up, got 2 wheels on the grass. It was pretty much a passenger there into the kitty litter on the chase. May not be quite close enough to execute the move. We dive into the right-hander. Not going to look here, Hard on the brakes, good exit. It's got the better exit coming out of the chase. Held up a little bit by the leading car. Remember, we're only on lap 22 of 161, so plenty of this action to go throughout the race. But I think we've seen Chris McClellan is pretty keen to get out in front and stay in front and really dictate the pace of the race. Anthony Gill only 9 seconds back in third now, quite enjoying this battle up the front as Chris McClellan finds himself on the inside heading up Mountain Straight. Should be in the prime position heading into Griffin's Bend to execute the pass. Gets the nose ahead. Later onto the brakes, a very well executed pass, and we should see him being able to settle in and maybe put a few seconds into the Collins car, which slips back into second position. Anthony Jewell with the quickest lap of the race after that mistake, making up for lost time with a 2:00.1. So exceptionally quick lap. I think perhaps berating himself behind the wheel a little bit for the mistake a lap earlier that almost put him into the lead, but instead lost about 10 seconds. Now the quickest car on the track by a fair margin. Second quickest on the track at the moment is the car in fourth with Harrison Tebb behind the wheel. Slowly chipping away, and after hanging around towards the back of the top 10, now fourth position on pure race pace. See the replay of the pass for the lead. Chris McClellan in the 1978 Gary Rogers, Pete Gagan liveried. Got the better exit out in the corner. Didn't give the Collins Pritchard's car much of a chance to get that done. Later on the brakes into Griffin. I think it's pretty smart from Collins and Pritchard just to let that car through. Live to fight another day. Because we've got plenty of mileage left to go in the 2022 Racecentre Bathurst 1000.
I've just been informed from that last pit stop that Zani did actually jump into the car there. So we do now have Alex Zani chasing down these boys. And that mistake was Alex Zani into the chase, probably just getting warmed up. He's just jumped in. He's actually helping out the guys at Racecraft to have a great day. And he's probably cooking the snags while he's not driving, and now he's jumped in. So Zani at the wheel.
A very, very quick steerer. Second in this race in 2019, and in the 2020 race, one of the quickest on the track. Unfortunately, wasn't dicing for the lead in the final stint, but was there and thereabouts in the first half of the race. The quickest man on the track at the moment. Now only 7.3 seconds behind the leader, and only 5 seconds behind the Collins Pritchard car, which I kind of feel on this pace will be on the bumper bar before the end of this stint. Might take this opportunity to run through the field at the moment as the race continues to set into a rhythm. Chris McClellan in the race leading car, just working way through some back markers there. Last lap at 2:01, and putting some distance now into Collins and Pritchard. You can see in the background there, as we'll cut to that car, about 2.5 seconds back, sitting in second place. In third place, Alex Zani. You can see not too far, just the length of the pit straight behind the front runners at the moment. Another very, very quick lap, 2 seconds quicker than the cars in front of 2 minutes lap 2:00.3 in third, and eating into that advantage the front cars have at the moment. In fourth, Harrison Tebb, having taken over from Bryce Elder in the precision car, the hashtag Save Wakefield liveried white and orange car. about 40 seconds behind the lead car at the moment. In fifth, the Just O'Brien car entering into the chase. Nice solid race from them so far, looking to consolidate that fifth place after hovering around the top 5 since the green flag flew. Matthews and Buxton not far behind them, only about 6.5 seconds in the Milwaukee Tools. Another car running its own race on a bit of a recovery drive from a qualified position a little bit further back than they probably expected to be. Being stalked at the moment by the car in 7th position. In the Team 18 Charlie Swirlscott Racing livery, Capone and Morabito. In 8th position, car that's run as high as 4th on outright pace. That is Travis Dinan and Jensen Herbert, racing out of Western Australia for Racecentre, sitting in 8th in the Ned livery car. Just ahead of the Boost Mobile liveried Sasha Grushin and Sean Judd, also out of Western Australia, the Racecraft stable of cars. Rounding out the top 10, we have the young kids, Freya and Henderson, our combination of 16 and 17-year-olds. Some blistering pace in qualifying and to start the race. Unfortunately, a few little mistakes have put them back in the pack, but once they settle in and find some consistency, could very easily challenge for the top 5 towards the end of this race. Remembering, we're just early days. That's your top 10 so far. In 11th, none of the Racecentre cars, the Monster Energy livery entry of John Harding and Lachlan Roma, sitting in 11th. One of the most consistent cars on the track at the moment, lapping between the 204s to 206s. Dropping back a little bit is the David Breaker Royal, Bryce Royal behind the wheel. Now the second stint, just avoiding a spinning back marker. A bit of a round of applause here at the sim as they avoid that issue, sitting in 12th at the moment. Gabriel Nunez in 13th has done the driving so far. Phil Chialeglio will get into that car in the next stint, we believe, sitting in 13th, just looking to find some consistency in their lap times at the moment. 205.6, the quickest of the race so far. In 14th, flying under the radar a little bit, a couple of little spins that have kept them just a lap down at the moment. Martin Hanbury and Nick Roberts, fairly new to sim racing. This is a car I think is going to get stronger and stronger as the race goes on. Currently sitting in 14th, 2 laps down on the leader, and rounding out the field is the Red Bull livery Cazares and Grant. We've seen just a little bit of struggling of handling, particularly towards the end of the stint. So that is the 15 in this race so far. And we'll jump back up to the race because, as expected, we've had a change for second position. Alex Sarni on a bit of a tear at the moment, has caught the Collins Pritchard car. So that is a change on the podium into second, and also a change in the broader Racecentre versus Racecraft battle with Zani out of Perth at the Racecraft Centre and Collins Pritchard driving for Racecentre. So the quickest car on the track at the moment by quite a margin, lapping about 2.5 seconds quicker than the Collins and Pritchard car last lap around. About half a second quicker than the lead car, Chris McClellan, who is still out by about 6 seconds out the front there. This car is the only car driving with 3 drivers this afternoon. Darnie and Jewel, we expect to be the quicker 2 of this combination. But Lee certainly no slouch, has been second in this race in the past. So expect to take some medal stints for this car Jewel we know is going to drive early in the race. Zani probably the one to finish this off towards the end of this 161 lap marathon. Chris McClellan, though, so far has been the class of the field of the race, just getting onto the inside ripple strip, getting the power down on the rear tyres across the pits straight. You can see Zani in the background. It's slightly less, about 80% of the pit straight is the difference between first and second at the moment. Currently looking at lap 28 for the leaders, so about halfway through the second stint. A few battle packs emerging in down the field, and here is in 6th place is the Matthews Buxton car, being followed by the Morabito entry. Jump onto the rear bumper bar. Just a little bit squiggly out of Forest Elbow, and it's probably just put a little bit of a gap between them and broken the slipstream on the way down into the chase. This is the battle for 6th. That's the Kazatsis Grant car just ahead. A couple laps down, going to take the dig from a long, long way down. Probably a little bit ambitious. Pulls out of it, but enough to put a bit of pressure on the Matthews Buxton car, and it's caused an error. We saw a little bit of a wiggle at the front of that car in that dive, even though he pulled out of it, was enough to put a bit of pressure, probably looking in the rear mirrors a little bit too much, and that is a change in position for 6th. Pit stop here as well for the Elder and Ted car. That Kazatsis Grant car almost involving itself in another issue down there at Hell Corner. Just as I was looking away at a pit stop. So that's about 14, 15 laps per pit stop for the Elder and Ted car. Pitted out of 4th and will re-enter the fray in 7th. We might get a bit of a chat with that car a little bit later on, just to see that strategy, exactly what they're hoping will shake up before the end of the race, because they're a little bit at odds with the rest of the field. 5.1 seconds now, the gap between Chris McClellan and Alex Zani at the front of the field. As we just watch a replay of that change of position. Rear right, onto the grass, power down, car went around, passenger from there. They have recovered. Running an effective 6th now, having gained a position when the Elder Ted car dived into pit lane for their second stop. Jake Elder behind the wheel of that car now. So they've had 2 stops, running on a slightly different strategy to the rest of the field. Have obvious pace. Oh, big crash. The leader has been involved in a crash up the top of the mountain, across the top of Skyline. That looks like it's a mix with the Grushin Judd car. Didn't quite catch how that started, caught how it finished though, and that has handed the lead to Alex Zani. Looks like maybe trying to avoid a spinning Grushin Judd, which had been running a very, very solid race up to that point. Looks like the Grushin Judd car had been involved in an altercation with the Kazatsis Grant entry heading into the dipper, and McClellan's arrived on the scene of the accident with absolutely nowhere to go. So a passenger there, and unfortunately, for the first time, the Kazatsis Grant car, now 4 laps down, has been a little bit of a mobile chicane. Those guys just need to find a little bit of consistency into the race. So the way this is shaking out now, we've got Alex Zani at the front on lap 31, Chris McClellan in second, 5 seconds down, and the Collins Pritchard car a 1.5 seconds behind there. And it's going to be the theme of the day, judging by this first hour or so, is back markers. Back markers impacting the contenders in this race. Still plenty of time for this to shake out.
Yeah, I mean, we're only lap 31 of 161, and already we've seen plenty of action. We just saw Chris McLennan lose the lead of the race, unfortunately to a back marker. Worst place you can actually get lost there is just in Skyline, just before the dipper. Sight unseen, it takes full commitment to go down Skyline at these speeds. And it looks like this is position as well because, the Ned car just spinning around there, getting a bit nervous that Collins Pritchard was behind him. It's
400-point turn to get that car extricated from the dipper. That puts them down into ninth. They've lost the position there to the Grushin Judd car, which we saw involved in that incident through no fault of their own, because us, Grant and Chris McKellen arriving on the scene as well. There are now 7 cars left on the lead lap. Jake Elder in the Elder Ted entry, the Bucks Romantic car. They've had one more pit stop than the cars in front of it, though. That's this race. And they are challenging for 6th, heading up Mountain Straight. Dives to the inside, I can see over my shoulder here at Racecentre. That position looks like it's being yielded by the Matthews and Buxton car. Wise from them, they're racing their own race, being very, very consistent. And as he says that, commentator's curse coming out of Griffiths Bend after doing so well, losing the backs, spinning it around, and just needs to get it turned around. These are the moments that are going to decide in 161 laps whether you are in the top 5 or not.
Scott, I've got to give special mention to the Capone Morobiati entry, and I'm sorry for Morabito entry, so I do apologise. In the Irwin car, they are in P4. We saw them further down earlier on in the race, but they've worked themselves up into P4, lapping in the 204s at the moment, and they're pretty consistent to the fastest lap of their race. Props to them. As we said at the start of the race, these boys are relatively new, especially to R Factor 2, and you know they're getting on it, and we can see their pace soaring as the race goes on. Lap 30, 31. Let's see what the times are going to be towards the end. While I've got you there,
Scott started the race in 11th, and they've been one of the most consistent cars throughout the race. In 4th at the moment, we think their true position is 5th. The Elder Ted car, about 10 seconds behind him, has one more pit stop. But I mean, as you say, we said it on lap 1. Consistency and rhythm is going to be the key. There's podium positions. You know, we think if all things being consistent, you know, the top 3 cars are skipping away from this field. But there is top 5 positions up for grabs from midfield cars that just have that consistency, if not the pure race pace to dip into the 200s and the 201s.
Yeah, as we're talking, we've got our third commentator joining us in the box, Dave Evans. He's been commentating with us all year, and he's joined us here today. Dave, how are you going, buddy? Have you been catching the action?
Yeah, I've actually been sitting here just watching a little bit of action, just trying to get a catch up from Scott and Terry, and on board with the Matthew Buxton end. It's just apparently poured over the mountain, and hello to the flat off to the side. So I'm not sure what kind of they're doing at the moment, as the leaders come around just to pass them, overtake them for another lap. But no, I'm doing really well, Shane. I'm sorry that I'm a bit late. My sincere apologies. But it's good to be here and ready for some action of 161 laps.
Well, it's only 33 laps down. We've got a lot to go, so never too late to join in, and it's good to have you join us in the commentary box.
Just a bit of breaking news. We saw the Matthews Buxton car. I think, Dave, you might have picked up on this. Have a spin coming out of Griffiths Bend, and now showing in the pits and in the garage, unfortunately. So we'll just get an update on where they are at the moment. Showing us 2 laps down, now down in 12th position. So, Dave, I mean, some early thoughts on the race from you. We've sort of been paired in it, watching it in minute shape. But how do you think this race is panning out? I mean, it threatens to get into a rhythm, and every time it does, something else happens.
No, yeah, that's exactly right, Scott. It's pretty hard to call who is in the best rhythm at this point in time, since it's 161 laps. We're only on lap 33 out of 161, so anything can happen in such a long race distance. But I like the way Chris McClellan is actually driving that car. He looks like he's a solo man from what I can see. So him driving 161 laps by himself is going to be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he'll actually... Mark Young will jump in with him, who is also a Down Under Series competitor and is a top 10 finisher in the 2020 edition of that. So Mark Young will jump into that car at some point, probably after the next stint as well.
Yep, so I think my odds-on favourite definitely has been Chris McClellan at the moment, because I've seen him drive in the British Touring cars as well, and he's just a phenomenal driver. So he's my go-to pick, I think, at this stage. But you know, anything can happen in such a long race distance. So we'll see what happens further on in the race.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've been saying rhythm consistency has been key, but you can control your own rhythm and consistency. It's a little bit different with the back markers. Sometimes you're going to have to allow them to have some fun as well. As we just see one of the back markers, that was Gabriel Nunes going off at the chase. There's plenty of variables that, you know, we've seen Chris McClellan mechanical issues.
Sorry, Scott. Baker's just had a massive accident. He's flipped it up onto his side, and then he's just recovered nicely. He was just chasing down Hardy and Ramo in the Monster Energy car. So I'm not sure who's had the wheel, but that was the Baker Royal entry. Just losing it going up to the hill, so he's lost a lot of time to that 9th position, which was a real shame. I saw that unfold from start to finish, so yeah, that was a bit of a shame for the team Racecentre Mustang, and they were going hard after that 9th place, so it's a bit of a shame to see them, you know, lose that time. So now they've got to make it up.
Yeah, Bryce Royal behind the wheel, and I think a pit stop is imminent for that car, and Dave Baker will be getting behind the wheel for the 3rd stint. So to dig through the field, bit of a battle forming here from the Capone Morabito car, and that is a change for position into 4th. As the Just O'Brien car, perhaps wisely, not getting into a fight that is not going to determine where they finish. Currently sitting in 5th after that. Although that's a redress, so we might have missed something happening there.
Yeah, Collins and Pritchard have just come into the pit lane from 3rd position. So they've got a big gap towards the Morabito car down into 4th position. So they'll come out in 3rd onto a new set of fresh tyres, so they won't lose a position. As we'll just scroll through someone's gone off, and that's Grant. Just had a bit of a spin at the top of the hill as the Just O'Brien car was coming through. Lucky there was no contact there. So yeah, just scrolling through the field. Got some close battles coming on as well. And I can't wait to see what happens later on in the race. So much excitement happening all at once, Scott.
Yeah, 100%. And this pit stop, as we see the Collins Pritchard car exit the pits, for me, I'd be a little bit worried about that strategy. We're on lap 34, and the lead car managed to stretch it to 20 laps their first stint. So that's quite a considerable difference, and that's essentially 1 or 2 extra pit stops if that strategy keeps playing through. Chris McClellan in 2nd, we haven't quite seen the legs of that car and what they can do in a stint yet. But yeah, maybe there's a different strategy Collins and Pritchard are playing out. We spoke about at the start of the race, Chris McClellan going onto the softs and everyone around him going onto the hards. That stayed the way that this race is pulling out. The Collins Pritchard car exiting on hards, as is Alex Zani in the lead car. Interesting, I did see the Elder 10 car put hards on the fronts and softs on the rear, which may be something that a few other people are doing as well.
Yeah, we've got a nice little battle happening between 8th and 9th position as they come down into the chase. And I think, they're going to go side by side. Oh no, Herbert has just taken that 8th position in the Ned Whiskey Racing, away from the Judd car as they come into the last corner. So this battle's definitely not over by a long shot, Scott. Anything can happen, especially when these two are fighting for position.
And that was nice of him just to light up the rears and the Ned car in front of the Ned branding. That's always encouraged from those of us at Ned Whiskey. Makes a good photo.
We're just watching the replay now of how it got done, diving deep into the chase. Full commitment. The guys managed to go side by side into there, and the boys in the Ned Whiskey car getting the better of the job there. Just news from pit lane, the Matthews Buxton entry had a bit of an electrical issue, but we've been managed to get him back on track, and he's managed to rejoin back into position, now running in P7. So good to see those boys up and running again.
And just about to go a lap down, so 6 cars on the lead lap after Alex Zani executes that pass on Conrod Straight. The 6 cars on the lead lap is the Zani Dual lead car on screen. Chris McClellan will hand over to Young. Collins Pritchard in 3rd, Capone Morabito in 4th. So 4th, Justin O'Brien, as we talked, just to pass for position there. 5th, Capone, 5th, Elder and Teb, and the Capone Morabito car in the pits, which is why live timing is messing me about a little bit. So 5 cars on the lead lap now as the Alexander goes through to complete lap 36.
Yeah, we've got Chris McClellan, from what I can see on the gaps that I've got here. Chris McClellan is starting to catch Zani just out in front at the moment, not by a whole lot, but he's just narrowed that gap, just a slight margin on that last lap. So McClellan definitely trying to finish strong here in Stint as he hands off to his co-driver Jan very soon, as you just mentioned, Scott. So Chris McClellan doing a fantastic job to be driving for 37 laps by himself. So that is absolutely outstanding effort as he is catching the race leader at this present time. So we'll see what kind of pace his co-driver Jan can produce when he steps behind the wheel of the car.
100%. There's storylines all over this race at the moment. One thing I'm sort of keeping my eye on is Dave Baker's back behind the wheel of the Racecentre livery car, currently down in 11th. And on fresh tyres and a fresh driver, it's given a bit of a hurry up to the 4th place Justin O'Brien, which is at the end of their stint. Obviously a lap down, but trying to force a way through on the way down in Conrod. Just need to make sure if you are going to get through nice and clean. Both cars on their own races. But the Justin O'Brien car, well, then it's right to get behind. It is a lap ahead, but towards the end of their stint rather than at the front of it. And I think it might be wise to let Dave Baker, who is full of gusto at the moment, through and let him run his own race.
Yeah, it looks like we've got in the chair of that Just O'Brien car, that is Josh Just on screen now, even sporting the retro red race shirt on screen, racing from home with his mate Stephen O'Brien. So they're both sharing a simulator, doing an awesome job currently in P4 at the moment.
Another one of the entries throughout the field who has been consistent all day, stayed out of trouble, and find themselves in the top 5 because of it.
Yeah, we've got the Elder and Teb car who's now catching the Just O'Brien for 4th as they make their way up the top of the hill with the Baker entry car just in front of them there. So I'm just going to keep an eye on this little battle just to see what unfolds, and then we'll see who comes out on top for that 4th position within the next lap or 2.
Looks like
Jake Elder behind the wheel there now.
Looks like Justice enjoying himself. He's really focused. He's sprung a little bit of a smile before, so he knows the challenge is coming. Maybe he's on the end of his 2nd stint or his 1st stint, so he could be struggling a little bit, but he's definitely enjoying the day. And up there in Queensland, we say g'day to you, and thanks for racing with us here today on the Racecentre Bathurst 1000.
I hope they've got their own barbecues and beers or beverage of your choice set up. We'll certainly see some smiles later on in the races. That kicks into gear.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, sorry, Shane. Just going to mention really quickly. We've got a three-way battle for 8th, 9th, and 10th between the Judd, the Herbert, and the Harding Roma entry coming up the top of the hill. So another nice little battle that's unfolding here at the moment on lap 38 out of 161. So these guys are definitely going to be fighting for position. So we'll see what unfolds between these three. And I'm sure it's going to be more exciting entertainment later down on the race.
Yeah, we're watching the Grushin Judd in the Boost Mobile entry, currently lapping in P8, and last lap was a 2:06. Their fastest lap of the race has been a 2:01.9, so great effort from them. And the headlights are on, I can see, so that's telling me that Judd is at the wheel at the moment. So he's doing a great job fending off, as you said, Dynan Herbert in the number 7 net entry Ford Mustang.
Automatically becomes a commentator's favourite, Sean Judd, by putting the headlights on, following instructions, making our job a little bit easier to determine who's in the car. So Sean Judd, top to the top of the Christmas gift list for the commentators.
Maybe a bottle of whiskey.
Well, there are some drivers in this race that are 16 and 17 years old, so fortunately we can't offer up adult beverages as prizes. But for anyone that is, come and see me after class and see what we can work out.
Looks like I saw this in the background. Looks like the Harding Roma entry just spun out coming out of the chase. But we've also got another pedal up the front, and that's the Teb and O'Brien has now come closer. Teb just dropping off a little bit, but I'll try and bring the other news on our replay screens.
Yeah, Jake Elder behind the car now, and I believe it's just dropped back a little bit on the car in front, but that's an ongoing battle between those two. We're getting close to a second round of pit stops for the top 2 cars. We're expecting the number 25 and the number 33, Alex Zani and Chris McClellan, to come into the pits. Laps 38 they're on now. They've been getting about 20 laps out of their stint so far. Somewhat surprisingly, the Collins and Pritchard car only managed to get to lap 35 for their second stop. So just keep an eye on how that strategy is going to play out, because they're essentially a minute behind the lead 2, which is about the length of a pit stop traverse, new full tyres. But if they're going to need to do an extra pit stop to finish this race, that's a minute they're going to need to find somewhere. And the pure pace of the front 2 cars is it's going to be very, very hard to reel that back.
Yeah, it's a tough ask, but there is plenty left in the race. Let's see if they get the job done. The strategies, the boys should be definitely settling in now, knowing how much those tyres are going to last each stint. At the moment, we're looking at just above 20 for the hards and just under that for the softs. I know that the Harding Roma Monster Energy car have their own strategy, which they're quite happy with. So they're currently circulating in the top 10 at the moment. They were up in the P8, but through pit strategy, they're currently in 10 through the cycle.
Bit of a driver change news from here at the Racecentre setup at Entertainment Park. Gabriel Nunes has stepped out of car 67, currently running in 13th, and field chair Leglio has jumped in for the first stint of the day from him. I think Phil's new to Racecentre this year.
Yeah, he's been joining our leagues halfway through the season. He's an ex-real-life race winner. So he's won it in the Porsche. What's got it up now, the Porsche?
Yeah, GT production cars in the in years prior. I won't exactly reveal the year.
No, he's still a spring chicken, so we love the fact that he's keen to come and race with us. You can see a photo of him in the overlay down the bottom right-hand corner. Bill's just jumped in the car. Gabriel's just hopped out of a double stint there, so Bill's got to get his eye in. So the first couple of laps will be his warm-up, and then he'll get the head down and knuckle into a good rhythm. Get that car further up the field.
Lap 40 now for our 2 leaders. Still no second pit stop. Lapping around the 2:02 mark. Sort of low fuel, but also high tyre wear, particularly for Chris McClellan, who is persisting with the softs in this second stint. We'll be keep an eye on whether that changes. But I would hazard a guess, based on the first stint length, that both of those cars will dive into the pits this time around. 1 minute and 9 seconds is the difference between the lead car and the Collins Pritchard car in third. So based on that, if both cars dive in, I think Chris McClellan and the Collins Pritchard car will be line astern when they exit the pits, battling for second position. Alex Zani should just have the lead if everything goes to plan. And let's be honest, at Mount Panorama and in sim racing, it rarely does.
That's right, and you know, Bathurst always, you cannot go to sleep thinking, oh yeah, this guy's running away with it, he'll get the job done. Absolutely not. It will always come down to the last lap, the last corner, just before the start-finish line. So make sure you stay tuned. Watch us till the end, and we'll be right back after these quick messages. Okay, welcome back. We're currently watching the leader, Chris McClellan, smoking it away out in front.
So Chris didn't come in that lap, remembering that earlier in the race had a little bit of a mechanical issue. That's put them out of kilter. So we're going to see when they stop next to see exactly where their fuel stop lies. The Zani dual lead car did come in and has exited in second ahead of the Collins and Pritchard car. About 10 seconds the difference there, which is what we expected. We think when the McClellan car comes in for its stop, it'll line up pretty close to that car sitting in second. But definitely these three are the cars that are dragging this race, or have grabbed this race by the horn, and certainly have put a little bit of a gap between them. The car that was running fourth, Just and O'Brien, has come into the pits, and that elevates the Elder and Ted car, which stopped quite early on in proceedings for the second stint, back up into fourth, which is where we believe they should be running on pure race pace.
Well, as we speak now, Chris McClellan has jumped into the pits, and we can see Zani just coming through Forest Elbow. But is that close enough to get the job done on Chris McClellan as he rolls through pit lane? 40 kilometres an hour it is for pit lane speed limit, so very long, slow pit stop for these guys. As you can see, Zani already into the chase, and McClellan hasn't even stopped in. In saying that, Chris McClellan, we haven't seen Mark Young hop in the seat, so will we see a switch in driver changes? Just look out for the name. Chris McClellan should change into a Mark Young. So Zani coming around Murray Corner now to take the lead. It looks like as the Chris McClellan entry Still waiting, and here we go. Relegated P2.
Collins and Pritchard just on the pit straight now. That's the battle we think we really want to see, is whether they can come out in second. Mark Young has indeed jumped into that car. We can see the name together in time. They're going to be neck and neck heading up to Mountain Straight. It's about a minute to travail the pits and have a standard stop of tyres and fuel, and they're slipping in third, Mark Young, to get his first laps under his belt for the 2022 Racecentre Bathurst 1000.
Yeah, so we're watching Chris McLennan just taking a bit of a breather from his first 2 stints there. He's got to take a big swig of a drink and let his teammate do the job, as Mark Young has been racing in the Down Under Series in R Factor 2 all year long, doing quite well in the championship. So going back live, watching Mark Young at the wheel in P3.
It's be interesting to see this third stint settle in before we can look at some lap times. About a 2:02 is where the top 3 seem to be pretty consistent, diving into the 2:01s and every now and again the 2:00s. But the 2:02 seems to be the sweet spot for consistency.
Yeah, it's a good number for them. They know that they can get to the right pit window if they do that. Anything more, it may mean an extra pit stop at the end of the race, which is what they do not want to do. Now they're going to find out how much laps their fuel load's going to carry, and how it compares to the actual tyre wear of the compound that they're actually choosing to use. As Stephen O'Brien on screen there on the driver focus comes into the pits, we'll watch how they do it done. Will we see a driver change live on air as Stephen O'Brien comes in for his set? There's a few cars in the pits now. We see the Kazazis and Grant entry, the Red Bull there, and further back that is
Hanbury and Roberts, who have been driving a very consistent race, perhaps not the outright race pace of some of the cars around them, but driving very safely and consistency just in the background there.
Looks like Stephen O'Brien's just come straight through pit lane, so it looks like he may have served a pit lane penalty for some reason. Usually it's to do with speeding in pit lane, but we're just going to the stats now so everyone can see why they received it. He doesn't look too fussed about, as we can see Josh in the background, or his skinny pins in the background, trying to give his mate encouragement as they race.
And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but he might have got a second pit lane speeding infringement while serving the drive-through, just flashing up on my screen. At 1:44 they received pit lane speeding, and at 1:47, which is now, they've just been issued another one, so it may have to come straight back in, but it just shows the importance to be able to jump on the pit lane speed limiter as efficiently as possible coming into the pits. And for a car that's been very, very consistent, silly mistakes like that can cost you.
Yeah, I've just noticed that the Chris McClellan class is no longer in the race. I've just seen it on his drive, and there's no one behind the wheel, so I'm not sure what's happening there. But there's a good little battle happening between 10th and 11th, between the Harding Roma entry and the Judd car down in 11th place. So they're coming a little close together. It's been building over the last couple of laps. And then Harding Roma just hits the wall into the exit as they go up to the hill. So we'll see what happens when this battle gets a little bit closer in the next two or three laps.
And sorry to interrupt, David, there's a fierce battle for second going on. It is Mark Young behind the wheel of that car that McClellan started. We'll see that name update throughout the race as they are hot spotting that car, doing driver swaps from 2 separate locations. Looking at third, we haven't seen pure speed race pace from Mark Young yet, but was quick during qualifying and practice, and looks to be giving the hurry up here out of Griffin's into the cutting. Takes a look, backs out of it. It's going to be right on the bumper bar across the top of the mountain.
as we ride on board with Mark Young now in the Down Under Series, chasing down what could be Pritchard now in behind the wheel of that entry. Closes in across the top, coming up to across Skyline. He's backed off a little bit, letting Pritchard ahead just take the wheel smoothly, just following him through.
I'm not entirely sure who is behind the wheel of the Zani Jewel Lee car in the lead, but they've skipped ahead to a 20-second gap at the front of the race now. I dare say Anthony Jewell may have got behind that wheel, knowing that he was going to be pretty early on. No.
Zani's still in the car. They'll let us know when they swap over. So I haven't received anything. So my assumption is Zani's still at the wheel.